Discover how a millionaire's surprising return transformed a little boy's cruel life forever. Bobby Thompson awoke to the familiar sound of his mother's sighs, a sigh that sank deep into the already worn atmosphere of their small apartment. The peeling wallpaper clung to the paint like a shroud over their struggles. He rubbed sleep from his eyes and sat on the edge of his bed, dreading the day ahead. School awaited, the battleground where bullies roamed, armed with sneering insults of loser and poor boy. Every word was a dagger, twisting deeper than flesh. Bobby felt small enough to vanish into the cracks of the floor. He knew the day would bring another round of torment, another relentless reminder of all he wasn't. Still, there was a flicker within him, an ember, longing for shelter and survival. His fingers drummed nervously on his desk, and he glanced at the crumpled basketball poster. He dreamed of being a star, of winning the championship, and hearing his mother's laughter instead of those hurtful jibes. But what if he didn't make the team? Anguish gripped him, a fear that pulsed like a warning light. He'd tried out last year, but his fear had choked him, reducing him to a shadow on the bench. Would this year be any different? As Bobby prepared for school, doubts fulfilled him. What if today was worse than before? He picked at his breakfast, the uneaten cereal a testimony to his rising anxiety. His heart raced at the mere thought of stepping through those school doors, the familiar sense of dread digging into his chest. Did anyone even notice him? The clang of his locker echoed in his mind, a reminder of isolation. He thought of Lucas Grant, the uncle he'd never met, who was out there somewhere, with riches as a shield against life's barbs. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each class felt like an arena, the cruel watch of his classmates drowning out any thoughts of victory. His eyes flickered towards the students, their laughter like knives. Every missed shot of the basketball during practice echoed with unbearable weight. Failure hovered over Bobby, a shadow that loomed larger with each passing moment, intertwining with memories of his mother's hard work. What if she had to endure another disappointment? Then there was Lucas. He knew so little about him, yet in an odd way, he felt drawn. The whispers in town had spoken of a reclusive millionaire, the type who forgot where he came from. Would he care? Would he ever understand? Bobby's hope struggled against doubt, a flickering candle in a tempest. As the day dragged on, a sharp realization gripped him. Lucas Grant was a piece of the puzzle he didn't know he needed. Could an estranged relationship with a relative really offer redemption? But what if uncovering this family connection was the remedy or the storm that would shatter everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the world? Pressure mounted as Bobby readied himself for the basketball tryouts. The desire to rise above the taunts battled within him, creating a cacophony of hopes, fears, and what-ifs. Would today change his life, or would he continue in the cycle of relentless mockery, with an ever-deepening pit of despair? As he stepped into the gym, the crowd loomed, frightening, formidable. All he wanted was to shatter the chains of his past and discover what lay beyond the pain. The truth was just out of reach, and until it revealed itself, Bobby remained caught in his own labyrinth of emotions. The gymnasium buzzed with noise as Bobby surveyed the stark blue floor, the scent of sweat and polish hanging thick in the air. His heart raced, not with excitement, but with the cold grip of fear. Rows of students congregated around the court, their laughter intertwining with the dull thrum of the basketballs echoing through the cavernous space. Each bounce echoed Bobby's insecurity, intensifying the weight that bore down on him. He took a moment pausing in the shadows, wrestling with self-doubt that had crept back to snuff out the flicker of hope. Was he strong enough to face the blocking wall of jeers, the inevitable pressure of expectations? The team's selections felt more like a chasm than an opportunity, an abyss into which he might plunge into despair. But as he watched his peers, he noticed something. They, too, wore faces tinged with anxiety. With each one who took to the court and showcased their skills, Bobby absorbed their imperfections. A missed shot here, a stumble there. They weren't perfect. They were simply trying, just like him. It sparked a daring thought. Perhaps he too had the right to fail. Could it be that failure wasn't a final verdict but a bruise on the journey toward growth? Steeling himself, he whispered to himself, "This is my moment." It felt trivial, yet the simple acknowledgement of agency thrummed in his chest. As the whistle blew, signaling the start, Bobby stepped onto the court with a resolve that felt foreign, yet exhilarating. The tryouts became a battleground, not just for the team, but for Bobby's sense of worth. Bobby grasped the ball and took a dribble. Each bounce reverberated through him, echoing his heartbeat. In that moment, he wasn't simply the poor boy from the apartment. He was a player. As he shot his first basket, the ball swished through the hoop, and a rush of adrenaline consumed him. For the first time, the crowd's laughter transformed from daggers into applause, a wall of sound that sent vibrations of possibility seeping into his worn spirit. Minutes passed. He played with a ferocity that exceeded his own expectations. The energy enveloped him, each move more confident than the last. The taunts faded, consumed by the exhilarating mixture of sweat and determination. He realized that there was power in vulnerability. The willingness to step into the arena meant he was already victorious. Yet just as optimism began to bloom, he caught sight of Lucas in the stands. The uncle he had imagined as the antidote to his life was here, and every injection of self-doubt rushed back. What would Lucas think of him now? A flash of shame and uncertainty clouded Bobby's focus. He hadn't spoken to Lucas, hadn't earned the right to stand alongside him. The whistle blew again, cutting through his turmoil. It was time for the final shots. Bobby hastily stepped up at the edge of the key. He took a deep breath, letting the swell of emotion wash over him. And then, with all his strength, he shot, not just for the win, but for self-approval. The ball sailed high and true. As it swished through the net without hesitation, a wave of exhilaration crashed over him. A mixture of surprise and joy bubbled inside him, yet the gaze of Lucas was still fixed with an unreadable expression. As he stepped off the court, he felt transformed. The tryout had ignited a depth of spirit he had yet to acknowledge. This was just a beginning. Doubt lingered, yet so did an undeniable spark of resilience. But would this newfound courage see him through the emotional turbulence that awaited, especially with Lucas now part of his reality? What if uncovering the truth about Lucas was more complicated than he ever imagined? Bobby walked off the court, heart still racing, but his rhythm now a cadence of triumph rather than fear. The adrenaline of scoring his shot mixed with the unexpected joy of others' cheers, igniting a tentative belief in his capabilities. Yet, that belief felt precarious in light of Lucas's unwavering gaze. It was as if a spotlight illuminated his insecurities, drawing every shadow of doubt into sharp relief. He made his way through the crowd, the exuberance of his classmates blending with a newfound isolation. While they celebrated, his mind spiraled, questioning whether the applause was for the boy who had made the shot or for the illusion of bravery he had crafted. What would Lucas say? He could already hear the queries, probing questions that laid bare his inadequacies. With each step away from the gym, Bobby reeled from the surge of emotions. He found himself sitting in the corner of the school courtyard, the sun casting shadows that danced across the pavement. It was supposed to be a place of solace, but it, too, turned into a battlefield of thoughts. He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to fend off the intrusion of looming expectations. What did Lucas represent? Success? Freedom from the burden of poverty? The thought of having to justify his choices made it hard to breathe. Was the trajectory of his life determined by the echoes of a wealthy lineage? Or was there space for deviation, for missteps along the path he had yet to carve out for himself? As he pondered, a weight hung heavier than it ever had. What if resilience didn't come from a single successful attempt, but from the continual struggle against doubt? Bobby shook his head, pushing that thought away. He couldn't afford to spiral into another bout of self-pity. He'd just experienced a glimpse of how far he could reach. Digging for hidden depths felt like an insurmountable task at times, yet he had tasted victory, even if it was fleeting. Returning home was like traversing a labyrinth, each turn laden with hesitation. He had an idea forming. Maybe he could talk to Lucas. Perhaps, he thought with a growing sense of resolve, since he was entering this new chapter of his life, he could learn from his uncle instead of feeling intimidated. But every imagined conversation was punctuated by uncertainty. What if Lucas laughed? What if he turned his back? Eventually, Bobby plopped onto his bed, unearthing his journal. Writing had always been his refuge, a sanctuary where words formed weapons against the chaos in his mind. As he scribbled down his feelings, the tension began to dissipate, flowing away with each stroke of the pen. He wrote about the triumph of scoring, the power he had felt in standing on the court, and the bitter sting of Lucas's gaze. It was the first time he'd acknowledged that it was okay to be vulnerable, to confront the complexities of his lineage. He paused, contemplating future practices, how he could use every moment as a stepping stone toward not only proving something to Lucas, but more importantly, to himself. As the pages began to brim with his reflections, a flicker of excitement sprouted within him, a quiet determination. He could tackle his fears, build a foundation for his self-worth that wasn't solely dependent on performance or accolades. But the question loomed, what would it mean to confront Lucas? The weight of that prospective conversation hung heavily in the air, refusing to dissipate. What if Lucas harbored secrets of his own that could challenge Bobby's perception of family? Bobby stared out the window, the fading light painting the walls of his room in soft hues of orange and purple. The day had slipped away, hours spent wrestling with thoughts that felt as though they were tangled in a primordial web. He rolled over in bed, grabbing the journal again, determined to pour his conflicting emotions onto the pages. He wrote feverishly about his fears, the implications of seeking out Lucas, and what it meant to uncover not just the mystery of their family ties, but also the potential lessons that could emerge from confronting his uncle. He needed to build a bridge between his past and the future he was crafting. A future where his worth wasn't dictated by lineage, but by resilience. As he wrote, a sudden realization struck him. This confrontation held the potential for more than clarity. It could redefine everything he thought he knew about himself and his capabilities. Yet, the idea of approaching Lucas still loomed large, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him like an anchor. Drawing a deep breath, Bobby paced around his room. It was becoming a ritual, using that physical energy to steer his racing mind. He had always marveled at how some people navigated their lives with such ease, but the moment he turned the spotlight on himself, doubt seeped in. What was it about Lucas that made him feel so small? Setting his mind on practice, Bobby acknowledged that he needed a strategy, not just for basketball, but for this conversation that promised to change everything. Just as he sparkled with anticipation after making that successful shot, he could summon courage again. He pulled up a chair to his desk, plucked another sheet of paper from the stack, and began drafting what he might say to Lucas. "Dear Lucas," he began, pausing as insecurity nagged at the edge of his thoughts. The words didn't flow with confidence. Instead, they hesitated and faltered as he grappled with how to approach someone who embodied the life he yearned for, a life he thought might always be out of reach. "Can we talk?" However cliché it felt, perhaps the simplest message would suffice. There was power in simplicity, in clarity. "I want to learn more about you, about us." He could feel the hope bubbling within him, overshadowed by a flicker of self-doubt. Would Lucas see him as worthy of this conversation? His fingers trembled slightly before he scribbled more notes about basketball drills and the commitment it would take to bolster his confidence. After an hour spent wrestling with thoughts on the page, Bobby leaned back in his chair, emotionally drained, but strangely lighter. As uncertainty lingered at the fringes of his mind, he accepted it as part of the process. He would face these feelings, tackle them like opponents on the court. With no clear timeline on when to reach out to Lucas, Bobby decided to channel the doubt into practice. The next day, he slipped out of bed, the echoes of the previous day replaced by a new mission. Every dribble on the court would be an exploration of his own capabilities. But as he laced up his shoes, a thought raced through him. What if this interaction with Lucas opened doors he never intended to knock on? The possibilities swirled in his mind like chaotic plays on the court, and a gnawing question settled in the pit of his stomach. Was he ready to confront not just his uncle, but the potential unraveling of everything he knew about his family's history? The moment approached, one that would either charge him forward or keep him tangled in unanswered questions. He could almost hear the court echoing back at him, calling him to step into the light or retreat into the shadows. With a final glance in the mirror, confidence flickered like the dying sun. He was prepared to take that first step. But what if Lucas's truth shattered the fragile notion of family he had built around himself? Anxiety kicked in, mingled with the thrill of possibility. Tomorrow would bring a pivotal decision, and he could feel it rising within him like the last heartbeat before a crucial moment in the game. As dawn broke, the soft light of morning filtered lazily through Bobby's bedroom window, a stark contrast to the turbulence swirling in his mind. With an insistent heaviness in his chest, he leaned against the wall, mentally rehearsing the conversation that awaited him with Lucas. Each replay felt like a practice drill, refining his words, adjusting intonations, and meticulously shaping his approach. Would he sound foolish? Could he strike the right balance between curiosity and respect? With fleeting confidence, Bobby decided to hit the court first. Each dribble felt cathartic, a rhythmic release of tension as he navigated through practice. The familiar sound of basketball on the concrete grew louder, eclipsing the mental discord that had taken root, and for a brief moment, he found solace in the familiar. The sharp snap of his sneakers against the surface mirrored his internal plea for clarity. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a realization that gnawed at him. He wasn't just sweating out anxiety, he was sweating out fear. Fear of what lay beneath Lucas's confident facade, of the truths that could either lift him or shatter his fragile understanding of family. With every shot he took, he visualized Lucas's potential responses. What if Lucas dismissed him? What if his uncle was not the savior he imagined, but a mere reflection of his shortcomings? Each possibility felt like a heavy weight on the rim, waiting for balance. He recalled moments from the previous months, conversations that revealed his capabilities, yet seldom translated into confidence. Marks of improvement on the court felt thin against the backdrop of this pivotal decision. Bobby realized that, like basketball, the conversation with Lucas required more than skill. It needed trust and conviction in oneself. As his mind roamed through strategies, an uninvited question floated to the surface. Was he ready for this confrontation? Introspection turned to an inevitable leap of faith. A gust of determination surfaced within him, igniting a spark that wouldn't let him back down. If he could maneuver through layers of defense on the court, surely he could navigate the complexities of familial ties. He paused amidst his drills, chest heaving from a blend of exhaustion and exhilaration. He stepped back, assessing his reflection in the glass of the gym windows. The fiery determination wrapped in uncertainty was a duality he hadn't perceived before. It struck him. He didn't just want a family connection. He wanted resilience, insight, and the strength to redefine who he was independent of that connection. Bobby believed this encounter was a crucible, a test of his emotional integrity more than anything. Taking a deep breath, Bobby ignited the final stretch of his practice. Dribble, shot, rebound, aim for the rim, and feel the pulse of potential lift him higher. Each movement came to symbolize his journey, intertwining control and chaos, building layers of resilience. There lay the answer to his turmoil, not in Lucas or his family history, but in claiming his own narrative, whatever unraveling may come. As he hit the last shot, the sweetness of the ball-meeting net echoed through the empty gym. He felt empowered, almost liberated by the past hours of contemplation and action, ready to transition from mere ambition to proactivity. But lurking behind that liberating surge was something else, too. A daunting realization of what awaited him beyond the familiar court. The heart of his hungering curiosity, where questions awaited answers, and families were defined in their truths. Tomorrow, a chance would present itself, carrying the potential for upheaval. Bobby could feel it deep in his core. The time had come to face Lucas, to confront not just the man, but all that he represented, a gateway to truths he had long since buried. Could he strip away the layers that shielded him? He smirked at the familiar thought. The moment was not just an opportunity, it was a reckoning. The sun was setting when Bobby found himself outside Lucas's apartment, a building that loomed larger than life, much like the man he was about to meet. The vibrant colors of the sunset reflected the turmoil in his heart, an amalgamation of anticipation and trepidation. Each step toward the door felt heavy, as if the weight of his desire for connection was physically manifesting. But he took a deep breath, reminding himself of all the shots he had made, the resilience he had built. As he stood at the entrance, a desperate thought crossed his mind. What if he was not equipped to handle the truth that lay within those walls? He dialed back the urgency that buzzed like static in his brain. He had practiced mentally, but reality was an unpredictable opponent. Would Lucas acknowledge him? Would he understand the need for answers about family beyond the surface? Tension coursed through his limbs as the door swung open. Lucas greeted him with a smile that felt warm yet enigmatic, a flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes that both comforted and unsettled Bobby. The room inside was alive with the light of evening, cluttered yet inviting, a chaotic mirror of the feelings brewing inside Bobby. "Bobby, you made it," Lucas said, gesturing for him to enter. "Yeah, I wanted to talk," Bobby replied, the words spilling out before he could recalibrate his tone. There was no time to hesitate. Clarity had to prevail. Lucas motioned toward a worn-out couch, the kind that had likely cradled many conversations and secrets. Bobby sat, trying to control the nervous bouncing of his leg, a familiar rhythm he performed on the court. The small talk flowed, veering from sports to mundane weekend plans. But Bobby found himself drifting, fixated on more profound questions swirling in his mind. "Look, I appreciate you inviting me," Bobby began, feeling the weight of his intention crystallizing. "I really want to understand more about us." "Us?" Lucas's brow furrowed in a mix of surprise and curiosity. "What do you mean by us?" Bobby hesitated, gauging the intensity of Lucas's gaze. "You're my uncle, and I've grown up without knowing you. There's so much I want to know. Why weren't you around? What was with the silence all these years?" As the words spilled out, he felt a vulnerability envelop him, a mix of determination and fear that left him exposed. Lucas drew in a breath, his expression shifting as if layers of a long-held secret were beginning to fray. "It's complicated, Bobby. Family matters can be like that." Each word seemed to weave a web of history that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. Bobby's heart raced. The conversation had veered dangerously into the realm of emotions he wasn't sure he was ready to navigate. But he was here, and retreating now wasn't an option. "Complicated how?" Bobby pressed, leaning forward. He needed to peel back the layers of uncertainty. "I made my choices, Bobby. Choices I sometimes regret. I can't change that." Lucas's voice wore the weight of regret, yet beneath it lay the faint traces of hope. Bobby's pulse quickened. Somewhere within the tension of those words lay a breadcrumb trail into answers about his father, about family, about himself. Is there more? Why not talk about it? I need to know who I am. Lucas's eyes met his, and all at once Bobby could sense a shift in the air. It felt like they were standing at the edge of something monumental, ready to plunge into those depths together. But then, an unexpected flicker of doubt surfaced. Would Lucas meet him with honesty? Or would the distance still linger, further solidifying the chasm between them? As the evening crept on, the air thick with unspoken truths, Bobby wrestled with the realization that this conversation was no mere familial catch-up. It was a dive into the very essence of his identity, scarred, yet eager for the truth. Would he find the answers he needed? Or would the pursuit unravel more than he was prepared to face? In that moment, the air grew heavier, and resolutions teetered on a knife's edge. The real question loomed large. Was he truly ready to confront the complexities of his lineage, the echoes of decisions that shaped his past? The stage was set for revelations he couldn't yet fathom, and deep down, Bobby was keenly aware that the answers could redefine everything he thought he knew. Bobby's heart raced as the tension in the room climbed. Lucas shifted slightly on the couch, the air crackling with the weight of unsaid words. Time seemed to stretch as Bobby wrestled with his desire for answers and the fear of what those answers might reveal. "Bobby," Lucas finally said, his voice softened as if he were carefully choosing his words. "The truth about our family isn't just about you and me. It's about generations of decisions that have ripple effects. I've lived with the consequences of those decisions." Bobby felt a wave of frustration wash over him. What does that mean? I can't piece together anything from that. Lucas's gaze was steady, yet it reflected a weariness that settled deep in Bobby's gut. "There was a time when I made choices that pushed family away, instead of bringing them closer. I thought I was protecting you. But in truth, I created a wall. You deserve to know the truth, but preparing for it requires strength I'm not sure you've discovered in yourself yet." Bobby clenched his fists. "Maybe I wouldn't need to gather strength if you'd just tell me. I've dealt with enough. I'm tired of secrets. Just say it." Lucas studied him for a moment, and Bobby could see the conflict dancing behind his eyes. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a reckoning. "It's about your father, Bobby. There's a history of pain and choices made in desperation. It connects to why I vanished." The name hung in the air like an uninvited guest. Bobby's thoughts raced. His father was a shadow in his life, a figure shrouded in ambiguity and absence. What did he do? Was he bad? "Not bad in the way you might think," Lucas replied, his tone measured. "He was entangled in unfortunate circumstances, choices that led to turmoil, choices that affected everyone around him. And I—" Lucas paused, his expression growing darker. "I believed that stepping back would spare you the fallout. But in reality, it only fostered confusion and questions." Bobby's mind churned. The story was convoluted, but the threads were beginning to unfurl, revealing a tapestry of heartache he had never comprehended. "You're telling me you ran away to keep me safe? You chose never to reach out because it was easier?" "It wasn't easy for me," Lucas shot back, the passion igniting in his voice. "There was a time when I was paralyzed by guilt. I am still paying for my choices. I regret every day not being in your life, but I want to make it right. I want to explain everything." Bobby's pulse quickened, a mixture of anger and a budding curiosity for the truth ignited within him. "I need to know who my father was, why he is absent, and what that says about me. I refuse to be a ghost in my own life. You can't keep burying the past in shadows." Lucas nodded, a sad smile creeping onto his lips. "Every layer of our family is complex, Bobby. It's not just answers, but understanding. Who we are, what we've become due to our decisions." This was more than a family conversation. It was a challenge to Bobby's identity, The more he peeled away the layers, the more he confronted himself. Who was he in light of this legacy? What did it mean to take ownership of a past he had never known? He was ready. For clarification, for honesty, for direction. But then something gnawed at him, a serpentine feeling of unease. Will knowing the truth make me stronger? Or will it shatter everything I thought I knew about my life? Lucas's expression darkened, betraying a familiarity with the very question Bobby now faced. They were entering territory so fraught with peril that a single misstep could send them tumbling into uncertainty. The air pulsed with anticipation as Bobby leaned closer, ready for revelations that would reshape him. Just as he was prepared to dig deeper, Lucas's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Neither one of them reached for it, the weight of the conversation holding them anchored to the moment. Bobby's heart pounded in his chest. Would the call be the interruption of an expected answer, or a doorway to more questions? As the tension thickened, he braced himself, understanding that the unraveling of his family's story was only beginning, and that discovering who he truly was might hinge on facing down more than just secrets. "This isn't over," Bobby declared, a newfound determination sparking in his chest. He was ready to confront not just Lucas, but the very essence of what it meant to be part of a family fractured by time and choice. With that thought burning in his mind, the night stretched ahead of him, dark and uncertain, as he prepared himself for the truths yet to emerge. Bobby's senses sharpened as the phone continued to vibrate on the coffee table, its relentless buzzing echoing the turmoil within him. He could feel the heaviness of each unanswered second, a growing urgency gnawing at his resolve. Lucas, momentarily distracted by the phone, seemed to standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. Bobby seized the moment, understanding that he could not allow fear or hesitation to dictate their path any longer. "Why are you avoiding this?" Bobby demanded, his voice cracking just slightly. "You've talked about your regrets, your guilt, but that all means nothing without action. You've been silent for too long." Lucas's gaze flickered back to Bobby, a storm of emotions passing over his face. What if the truth causes more pain? What if it breaks something in you that you can't fix? "In that case, I'll have to learn how to fix it," Bobby replied, determination lending weight to his words. "But I can't find my strength without knowing where it comes from. It's time for you to step into the light and help me find my way." Lucas took a deep breath, the weariness still etched on his face but now accompanied by a glimmer of contemplation. He had built walls to protect both of them, but it was Bobby who stood before him, unguarded and willing to confront whatever lay ahead. "All right," Lucas finally murmured, as if the decision had shattered a spell. "You're right. The time for silence is over. But we need to do this carefully. It's not just about knowing who your father was. It's about understanding the choices he made and the weight they carry." As the words left his lips, Bobby felt a tension uncoil within him. He was on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss filled with the unknown. What do I need to understand? What did he do that was so terrible? Lucas leaned forward, eyes locked with Bobby. "Your father was afflicted by a desperation that clouded his judgment. He made decisions that betrayed his values, leading to consequences that echoed through our family. I had to take a step back because sometimes love means letting go, even if it breaks your heart." Listening to Lucas, Bobby began to grapple with the complexities of family, fragile ties built on both devotion and betrayal. With each revelation, he could feel pieces of his identity falling into place, yet others shattered like glass, leaving jagged edges that cut deep. Does knowing this make me part of it? Am I to carry that burden? Bobby's voice was a whisper now, teetering on the edge of despair. That's for you to decide, Lucas replied, his tone firm, yet compassionate. But I can tell you this. You're not alone in this. Your past may be tangled, but you have the power to shape your future. It's your choices that will define who you are, not merely the shadows of others. A rush of determination filled Bobby, the embers within kindling into a fire. Then I choose to confront it. I want to understand why he left. I want to know everything that led to this point. I'm not afraid anymore. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Lucas said, nodding slowly, but the resolve to move forward despite it. If we delve into the truth, you must be prepared for the impact. You'll need to confront parts of yourself that you may not be ready to face. With the commitment trembling on his lips, Bobby felt an unexpected power flowing through him. He could navigate this storm, armed with knowledge and an earnest pursuit of self-discovery. As the conversation shifted towards his father's history, Bobby sensed that he was on the brink of uncovering deep layers of his own psyche. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Instinctively, Bobby's heart skipped. Whatever lay beyond could be the interruption they didn't need, or it could usher in challenges that would further define his journey. He exchanged a glance with Lucas, their shared anticipation palpable. With that single moment, Bobby understood that he was embarking on a path to reshape not only his understanding of family, but his very sense of self. He was ready to answer the call when it came, knowing that the threshold he stood before was not just a doorway to the past, but one that could illuminate his future. With a tumult of emotions swirling around him, Bobby took a step forward. The next chapter of his life hinged on the answers beyond the door, and he was determined to face whatever awaited him. Would they provide clarity, or would they plunge him into deeper confusion? The answer loomed just out of reach, but Bobby was resolute. There was no turning back now. Bobby approached the door, hesitating for a split second, his hand hovering just above the handle. The knock echoed again in the silence, demanding an answer, and he felt a rush of anticipation layered with dread. Lucas watched him, and in that unspoken exchange, they both understood the gravity of the moment. With a deep breath, Bobby swung the door open, half expecting a stranger, and instead met the last person he anticipated to see. An older man with a weathered face, adorned with fierce blue eyes that seemed to hold worlds of experience. It was his father, standing there, as real and conflicted as the shadow that had loomed over Bobby's life since he could remember. "Bobby," the man said, voice cracking like the old paint on the doorframe. "I know this must be a shock." Bobby's mind raced, colliding with disbelief and anger so fast it made him dizzy. "Why are you here? After all this time?" His voice cut through the air, sharp with accusation. "I came to find you," his father replied, taking a tentative step forward. "There's so much I need to explain, but I understand if you don't want to hear it." The invitation, the potential for clarity, hung between them, but it felt poisonous, tainted by the past. Bobby wrestled with a multitude of emotions boiling within him. The urge to slam the door shut while simultaneously wanting to hear the answers that had eluded him for years. Lucas cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "Perhaps you should hear him out, Bobby." His voice was steady, offering a lifeline amidst the swirling storm in Bobby's heart. Bobby's gaze shifted to Lucas, searching for guidance. Lucas had fought through his own darkness, emerging stronger for it. Could Bobby find that same power now? He turned back to his father, layers of complexity in his expression. "Fine," Bobby finally said, his voice laden with trepidation. "Come inside." As they moved into the living room, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Bobby settled into an armchair, while his father took a seat across from him. The very familiarity of the setup felt unsettling, a cruel reminder of the familial bond that had always been just out of reach. "I never intended to hurt you," his father began, eyes clouded with regret. "There were choices I made that seemed right at the time, but they were selfish. I lost my way and hurt you in the process." The words washed over Bobby, but instead of providing relief, they opened wounds he didn't know he had. "You left. You can't just say that and expect it to mean anything," Bobby shot back, frustration welling within him. What does that even mean? What could be so important that you'd abandon your family? Each question came out bolder than the last, layered with both fury and an insatiable curiosity. He needed the truth to form a foundation. But what if that foundation was built on shattered promises? I was trying to protect you, his father explained, desperation lacing his voice. I thought leaving was for the best. I was struggling with my own demons, and I believed distancing myself would spare you from my failures. Bobby felt a knot tighten in his chest. The juxtaposition of accountability with victimhood was stark. What did that mean for him? Would he be forever marking time with the consequences of choice and circumstance? Forever tangled in the web spun by another's miscalculations? Protect me? Bobby echoed incredulously. How could you think that? Being there, flaws and all, would have meant more. It would have been the fight worth having. His words sparked a shift within him, igniting a flicker of empowerment. Bobby realized that he would define this moment, not through his father's actions, but through his own choices and voice. It was his past, his story now. As the weight of the conversation deepened, Bobby understood that the darkness of abandonment would not mar his future. Instead, he finally acknowledged that it was his resilience that would shape who he'd become. Tell me everything, he said firmly, the resolve in his voice resonating within the room. I need to understand how you spiraled to this point, and in doing so, I will find out what it means for me too. But as these words left Bobby's mouth, another knock echoed through the house, this time even more insistent than before. The urgency of the moment transformed the air around them, signaling that the journey of revelations was far from over. Bobby's heartbeat quickened. Who else could be standing on the other side? Did this knock herald more truth or shadows long buried? Time felt suspended as he glanced at Lucas, seeking reassurance, and yet sensing a tremor of disquiet creeping in. He rose to answer the door once more, fully aware that each unanswered question invited a deeper plunge into the chaos yet to unfold. As Bobby opened the door, he was greeted by a woman whose presence filled the room with an unexpected warmth. It was his mother, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and an urgency that seemed to transcend the years of separation. Bobby, I heard, she began, but the words caught in her throat as she took in the tableau before her. Lucas, the father Bobby had never truly known, and the unmistakable tension hanging thick in the air. Mom? Bobby's voice cracked, disbelief flooding his thoughts. The complexities of his life now seemed to converge at this singular moment, drawing together the strands of love, hurt, and yearning that had shaped him. I came as soon as I heard. Her gaze flickered from Bobby to his father. I felt it was time, but I didn't expect. What are you doing here? Bobby interrupted, trying to anchor himself amidst the swirling emotions. We were just starting to figure things out. His mother stepped inside, determination shining through her apprehension. I know, but we need to face this together. All of it. The past, the choices, everything. The weight of her words pressed down on Bobby, yet they breathed new life into the conversation. It was no longer just about him and his father. It was about healing the fractures in his understanding of family, a landscape riddled with questions and longing. Your father's been trying to speak to you, his mother continued, her voice steadier now. And I need you to understand that there were reasons for everything, for my decisions, for why we found ourselves living apart. We tried to protect you, but it resulted in silence, and I regret that. Bobby shifted in his seat, the tight knot in his chest easing slightly. Why didn't anyone tell me before? I can handle the truth now. I need to know my own history. Lucas and his mother exchanged glances, and Bobby could sense the gravity of their words unspooling threads of the past, the misconceptions that had long shaped his identity. This was the moment he had yearned for, the confrontation he had prepared for. Not just with Lucas, but with the legacy of choices made before him. "It's complicated," Lucas said, finally breaking the tension. "When you have a family, there are layers to history. Things aren't always black and white. Your father made mistakes, but he wasn't alone in carrying that weight." Bobby felt a flicker of anger spark within him. "So, this is about choosing avoidance again? I need honesty, not veiled decisions made in the name of protection." His voice rose, fueled by the intensity of family dynamics. "If we're going to move forward, we have to acknowledge everything." His mother nodded slowly. "You're right, Bobby. We need to confront what lies within the past, so we can rebuild from it. None of us handled it perfectly. No one showed the courage to address the repercussions of choices made in fear. I'm here now to share my truths." The strength in her voice ignited something within Bobby, layering his uncertainty with resilience. Perhaps it was time to confront all the complexities of his lineage, to take the painful steps toward building an identity that was wholly his own. "I want the truth," he reiterated, his voice steady. "I need to know how all of this has shaped me, how each decision has led us to this moment. This isn't just about your choices. This is about who I am." Lucas rose to his feet, appearing finally ready to step into the light, rather than obscuring himself in shadows. "Bobby, everything I did that pushed you away was born from panic and a fear of failure. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that a family's strength comes from confronting the truth together, no matter how imperfect. I have things to explain. And I want to listen," Bobby interjected, the determination to become not just a bystander to his destiny propelling him forward. "We're family, for better or worse, and it's time to tear down these walls." His mother chimed in, her voice reflecting the sincerity of her newfound resolve. "We can learn together, Bobby. Let's face our story, the pain, the mistakes, but also the understanding that can emerge from this reckoning." As the three of them stood there, a profound shift began to settle for the first time. A commitment to face not just the facades of each other, but the scars brimming beneath the surface. They would navigate this complexity together, reclaiming not just the shared history, but the potential for a future redefined by honesty. Bobby's breath quickened as he looked around at the two pivotal figures of his life. In that moment, he realized he had taken the first steps toward not just understanding his lineage, but embracing the fullness of his identity. He felt unshackled, poised on the precipice of transformation. With resolute conviction, he nodded. "Let's embrace the truth. I'm ready to learn who we are, collectively and individually. I'm ready to build a life rooted in understanding rather than silence." As they gathered around, together at the crossroads of healing and revelation, the sun outside cast warm shafts of light into the room, a symbol of hope, illuminating the path forward. It was within this shared embrace of vulnerability that Bobby not only found a family but a future of his own making, In the aftermath of such profound confrontation, legacy would no longer be the shadows of past decisions. It would become a canvas for choices made in hope and possibility. Bobby now stood firmly on the ground of his identity, confident, empowered, and embracing the fullness of who he could become. This was not merely an ending. This was the beginning of Bobby's transformation. With this new awareness, Bobby understood that the journey of self-discovery must come with introspection, empathy, and resilience. In rising to meet it, he was not just confronting history, he was paving the way for a new narrative, one that made space for healing. As the echoes of their powerful confessions faded into embraces of understanding, Bobby reveled in the clarity of purpose. He would not be defined by the circumstances, but rather by his action, compassion, and unwavering resolve. And there, within the shared bonds of family, Bobby Thompson had finally discovered the strength to conquer the battles of his past and forge the path of a promising future. This is your call to action. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss further captivating stories of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because your support fuels these narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about this resolution, as your thoughts matter most to us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to inspire someone today.